Always fun to see familiar faces and new ones in the chat room, but alas, I have to end the stream.
This is the Citadel Cafe.
This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 80, recorded live Wednesday, September 18th, 2013. My name is Joel Duggan, and joining me this evening is Mr. Ryan Murphy from The Gamers Inn, Zombies Ate My Podcast, and Sleeping with the Elephant. Does the list go on, sir?
I'm not allowed to complain that I have no free time, or that I'm too busy, because this is all my own doing.
Yeah, you bring it upon yourself, sir.
Yeah.
Bring it upon yourself. If you happen to be new to the Citadel Cafe, dear listener, this is where myself and usually a guest or two come to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. We're not myopic. It could be a website, could be a book, could be an app, could be a movie or television show. Whatever we see fit to tell you about, we will share our nerdy knowledge, and if we think it sucks rocks, we'll also let you know about that stuff too. So that is it. That is the general scope of the show. So before I dive into the small talk with Ryan here, I do have to give a quick shout out to The Coast, which is a local weekly newspaper here in Halifax. And we have once again been nominated for Best Podcast here in Halifax. Last year in 2012, the Citadel Cafe managed to get a nod to second place, which we were very thankful for. But if you would like to vote for The Coast vote for The Coast. Vote for the Citadel Cafe. Too many C's. If you'd like to vote for the Citadel Cafe in The Coast, go to thecoast.ca. There's a great big vote banner in the very top right-hand side. You'll be able to fill out the Reader's Choice survey, and when it gets to the Best Podcast section, give your vote for the best podcast, whatever you think that might be. And that's it. That's the easiest way to support the show at the moment, and we very much appreciate it. So that's it. Ryan, what's new with you, man?
I literally just got home because I spent like 2 hours looking at a wedding venue.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I don't think I've been on the show since.
You haven't.
Since Nertacular.
You haven't, no.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations from the Citadel Cafe.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm engaged to Ashley. We were at Nertacular, and I took the chance to say, I'm dragging in all this nerdy stuff, and better get used to it. That was basically the conversation, I guess. She did say yes, and we're actually at our old university. We're looking at heading out to Trent University and getting married there. We're still looking at it, but
is that where you guys met?
Yeah, we met in university, and
it's
cool.
Funny.
Like I was thinking about it, and sounds sort of cliche, but those 2 years I spent at university really were the most life-changing years, and I don't know, it was weird, and when you think about getting married at your school, it kind of sounds weird, but they really have a top-notch, I'm no wedding planner, but they made it really easy, and but unfortunately we have to go to a bunch of other places and look, and the madness doesn't end.
Yeah, the thing about universities is that the campuses, at least as far as I can tell, around our neck of the woods, are always immaculate.
Right.
Obviously depending on the time of year, but Mount A, where I went to school, lots of people have been married there for the same reasons, because they meet there. Mm-hmm. And also Dalhousie here, I've seen several marriages at Dalhousie on campus. And the cool thing about most schools is that they're usually pretty old. Like, you can get some very picturesque settings with, buildings that are 100, 150 years old.
Right.
In the squares. Maybe not so much for the ceremony, depending on where you want to have it, depending on what size wedding you want to have, but certainly for pictures and stuff right afterwards, you can easily just march outside and have beautiful gardens and, manicured lawns and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Trent's really nice because it's kind of, the campus is split up by a river. There's this nice river that flows, a nice big river, actually, and there's a huge bridge, kind of connecting the campus, and it's all on one side of the water, but most of the festivities take place near the water, so there's tons of great places for photos, and I guess the only issue really is we're going to have to start looking at guest lists, and that's where weddings, to me, sort of start being about other people as opposed to being about the couple, and I dread having this conversation with my parents where I'm like, I'm thinking I'm gonna have to cut the guest list down and maybe not invite every single cousin and
Yeah.
you know.
Here's something that both Jocelyn and I share an opinion on.
Hmm.
Also, something that she has said recently to her friend Jamie when Jamie and Preston were down visiting us this summer, was that think about the people that you would just be heartbroken if they couldn't make it. That's your guest list.
See, and for me, that's easy for me. I mean, like I would never take it personally, and it's weird that on the Citadel Cafe we're talking about weddings. I swear,
Hey, you know what? There's a wedding nerd out there somewhere that's just geeking out about all this stuff.
yeah. I mean, if anybody has any suggestions, I'm all ears. But yeah, no, I'm personally of the matter. Like it's not personal, but I'm gonna invite the people that I think, like you said, you'd be heartbroken if they weren't there, and you know, I just I know if my family's they're very traditional.
Hmm.
This is not a traditional wedding we're going to be having in sort of comparison to what they're used to.
Hmm.
So I understand there's going to be some growing pains.
Yeah, it's
Um,
not their wedding.
exactly. That's the one thing you got to remember. And
Hmm.
I think Ashley and I are seeing are sort of in agreement and everything about this, and it'll be interesting. And thank the gods it only happens once, right?
Yeah.
Well, you hope.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's usually the plan.
Yeah, no, that is well, yeah, exactly. Let's hope that's the plan because man, a whole year to plan one, sort of half a day event.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy when you think
Oh,
about
I think you might be underestimating how much of the day the event actually takes up.
it. All right, the weekend. We'll give
Yeah,
it
I
the
think you're
weekend.
looking at more of a 4 to 5 day kind of with all the prep and everything thrown in there. I'm sure you're looking at a much larger event than
Yeah.
that. I mean, I suppose it does depend on the size of the wedding. Most of the weddings that I've been to have been fairly traditional,
Mm.
so there was a lot. There's the bachelorette and there's the bachelor party, and then there's the 2 days before the wedding when everybody's scrambling, and then there's the day of where everything starts at like 8:30 in the morning, and next thing you know, it's 8:30 at night, and neither the bride nor groom have had anything to eat, but they have had plenty to drink. Like there's just it seems to be the same rigmarole. No one ever seems to get better at it.
Yeah.
But not that I, myself as a guest haven't enjoyed the weddings I've gone to. I've really enjoyed watching some close friends get married and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's been nice in that respect. And I've certainly learned a lot. Like I've gone to some fairly big endeavors, and I've also gone to like pizza and homemade wine in tents on the beach and had a very good time. It's all about just the way that not the way that it's presented, but people's attitude towards it. I mean, if you've got a bunch of open-minded friends, then they're really not going to care. They're going to be there for you guys just to pat you on the back and say, "This is freaking awesome."
Yeah.
Congratulations, and that's it. Like they're not really going to be too worried about it. But
I'm just worried about like the curmudgeon old person who comes up and says, "Back in my day, weddings were hosted with a bunch of people and chairs, and
yeah,
it's just."
well, and the thing is though, like when they were married, their parents were saying the same thing.
Yeah, I guess
Like
they just made the mistake of listening.
I mean, the social conventions change so much in the course of 30 years, which is about the average, for someone getting married these days, right?
Mhm.
So, you have a kid, and then 30 years later, give or take, that kid is probably going to find themselves being married.
Yeah.
And, like, what can change in 30 years? Like, everything can change in 30 years. So, I mean, what makes a good wedding in 2000 does not make a good wedding in 2032. Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't worry too much about it, man.
You know what? I'm trying not to. I want to get excited about it, and the one
Mm,
thing I don't want to happen is just like, people just
drama,
constantly
yeah.
are just drama. And I think at the end of it all, like I think I said this a few times over a family dinner, like this is our wedding. We're gonna make the invitations. When you get one, you're welcome to say yes or no.
Yeah,
And I said that I fully meant it as well, and not in a mean way, just in a, we're gonna have a good time no matter where it is or what we do. It's just
yeah,
gonna be a good time.
yeah. Um, one of the things that you can probably use
Hmm.
to smooth over, any kind of agitated guests would be, serving them some Keurig coffee. That
Yes,
tends to calm people down.
I've been enjoying my Keurig coffee, so I could just a quick plug for Keurig. If they want to sponsor my wedding, they're more than welcome to.
There you go.
Um, The reason I put this in the notes is today over lunch, someone told me that Tim Hortons had Keurig capsules. Now, first of all, do you have a Keurig? Do you use a Keurig?
No, we have a French press.
Yeah, you're a traditional coffee guy, aren't you? Like
Yeah,
the just
I don't even do drip coffee anymore. I do the French press thing.
see. I was thinking of going French press because
They're cheap.
yeah. Well, a friend of mine at work has one, and he just has it down in the break room and uses it to make coffee.
Hmm.
And because office coffee is never anyone's first choice, and unless
No,
you've been there for 30 years and
then
you're
it
just
doesn't
used to
matter.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
your
but
taste buds are all fried.
I got a Keurig from a good friend of mine as a housewarming gift, and I've wanted one for so long because instant coffee sounds amazing to me. And I've been on, as a Canadian, I'm always on the search for some sort of Tim Hortons easy duplicate, and I
Hmm.
haven't quite made it. I've tried the grounds and the beans and the Tassimo discs, but I'm having the Keurig one right now. It tastes pretty good.
Yeah, I've had them. My mother has one, and my sister has one. I want to say it's Keurig. It's that or Tassimo. I mean, they're the same sort of idea.
Yeah.
It's they inject hot water into a little capsule, and then it makes coffee in about a minute and a half or whatever. And
Hmm.
it's good. It's very good coffee. I really can't say anything bad about the taste. The issue that I take with it is just like the machines are somewhere between 150 and $200, depending on whether you get it on sale.
Hmm.
And then you've got these expensive capsules, which may not be crazy expensive when you compare it to like going to Tim Hortons or going to Starbucks every day.
Hmm.
But you've got those, and then there's all the waste. Like you've always got this plastic thing to throw away. I'm sure some of them are recyclable, but how many people actually do that? That sort of thing. For me, the French press is straight up easy. Like I put any grounds I want in it, and when they're done, they go in the compost. I rinse a little bit down the drain. I try not to, but like that tends to be how it goes.
Hmm.
And that's it. Like there's no paper. There's no, I don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. Now on the flip, it's difficult when you have company because
Hmm.
our current French press, and we could buy a 4 cup, but we only have a 2 cup, so I can only make 2 cups of coffee at a time.
Yeah, I mean, you have the same issue with the Keurigs or the Tassimos in the sense that you don't want to go through a bunch of capsules. I mean, not that your guests, there might be some guests that you want to treat to a Keurig, but there might be others where it's just easier to make a pot of coffee. And I mean,
Yeah,
I still have like the drip coffee that
yeah,
I sort of treat the Keurig as like sort of like a special, man, I need a coffee at 8 o'clock
yeah.
to kind of boost through, right?
Yeah, my mother does both. She has a
Mhm.
Keurig, and we bought her a French press to take down to Florida with her, so she didn't have to haul this Keurig back and forth. And so she uses the French press in both places, but she likes the Keurig when she goes to work. Like up in the morning, get a coffee, it's in your cup, you're out the door, don't have to worry about anything. But when she's home on like a Saturday or on a day that she's off, she uses the French press because she likes it that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to mix things up, and I'm kind of into the flavored coffee sometimes. I try to like
Hmm.
in the evening I want to have a lighter coffee, so I'll throw like a raspberry truffle light coffee in there, and
Hmm.
and I rather than stock like 100 bags of beans of coffee, I can just have my one standard bag of coffee and then have like a bunch of different Keurigs
Yeah.
capsules.
Yeah.
But
Now, you know that lighter coffees have more caffeine, right?
you mean well, I guess what I mean is like light. Wait. Isn't the extra bold has extra caffeine?
No, it's the reverse. The
Oh my
darker the
God.
coffee, the less caffeine.
I've been doing this. I am a coffee noob.
Yeah, no, it was backwards when I first learned that too, but
Uh-huh.
I think it's because the longer the beans are roasted, the more caffeine is just like baked out of them or roasted out of them or whatever.
Weird.
Darker beans taste more coffee flavored.
Hmm.
Like it's a richer coffee flavor, and can be more bitter. But for lighter roasts, there tends to be more caffeine. And I feel like this may not be true of Keurig stuff, but certainly when you go to a place like the Second Cup or Starbucks, the flavored coffees tend to have more caffeine. Although, I mean, at Starbucks it might not be so because Starbucks usually has like syrup flavors, whereas Second Cup, in my experience anyway, has got their flavors are brewed. Like the beans are flavored and then ground and then brewed that way. But one of the things that I do like about the French press, which I don't know, you might be able to correct me on this, about the Keurig, is that depending on how strong a cup of coffee I want, I can let it perk for 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15, like depending on how intense I want my coffee. Can you do that with the Keurig?
You're really your only options with the Keurig is whatever capsule you put it in, and then your cup sizes. So like usually what I'll do is I'll make a bigger cup of coffee, which strains the beans more, right?
Right.
So you're getting, I guess, less less caffeine, but more coffee.
Mm.
I usually make the big cup, but you know you can definitely condense that into a smaller cup, and then you get more of that caffeine in there. But I don't think you can set any timing settings. It's all fairly like a standard time setting, at least with the one I have. I don't know if I have the yeah, I think I have the middle of the road one, but maybe there are options out there that let you
Yeah.
extend the time.
You can get attachments where you can put your own grounds in too, right?
Yeah, they have like the personal K disc, whatever they call it, and it's something I've been thinking of looking into to see what the flavor would be like,
Mm.
because it's a machine, and I like to think it makes the coffee different than a drip coffee would do it.
Hmm.
So, maybe it would taste better just because of the way it's being prepared. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I've had both at my mom's place. I've had like a flavored cup or a Mexican dark roast or something like that. When we're having dessert down there for dinner on Sunday.
mhm.
But then I've also had just she put her own grounds in, and I do a mix of stuff here. I mean, like we buy Maxwell House just for like every day, kind of get up in the morning, just make coffee without before you can really see straight. But for like weekends with pancakes and stuff like that, I have a grinder and I have fresh beans in the cupboard that I'll grind fresh coffee on Saturday or Sunday
Mhm.
for events like that. And that's a big difference. You notice a huge difference between buying mass-produced coffee on sale for $7 for a kilogram, and when you pay $7 or $8 for a bag of beans, and you fresh grind whatever you need for the next day, that morning. Fresh ground coffee has a huge flavor difference
Mhm.
compared to just not over the counter stuff, but like consumer brand stuff. But I found it sounds sacrilege. I really don't like Tim Hortons. I'll deal with it if I have to, but I really don't like it.
I was joking. I
Yeah.
mean, like, it's funny. Like, an American would probably like, Paul's like, everybody drinks Tim Hortons up in Canada, but it's not true. And I've sort of fallen out of the Tim Hortons bandwagon as well. I
Yeah.
find going to McDonald's more for their coffee.
Apparently, McDonald's has done a really good job with their coffee.
Yeah, no, it is really good, and they mix it up a lot more than Tim Hortons. I mean, Tim Hortons, the last thing they did was, hey, we made our cup sizes bigger, and we're going to charge you more.
Yeah.
Whereas McDonald's is, I mean, they have the dollar deal. I think at one point, like they're giving away free small coffees. Now they're doing like the punch card thing. And one of the most annoying things about the punch card is having to like the awkward, like, oh, here's my card, stamp it, please.
Mm-hmm.
But McDonald's, they're smart. They have a really good marketing team. And I made a fool of myself, but I learned. I tried to give her the card, and she's like, "Oh no, you stamp it yourself." And I'm like, "Oh, how would I do that?" It's like it's on the cup. And it's like, "No, I know the card is on the cup because you literally pull the card. It's in the cup, like you pull it off as if
Mm-hmm.
it's like part of the wall,
Yep.
and then right beside it is this little sticker. You stick it on yourself. It's like McDonald's. Like if only you didn't serve crappy burgers, then you'd be perfect.
Yeah.
They really took it to the next level, and I mean, as funny as a punch card is, it is kind of cool when you think about it.
Yeah.
I wish a lot more places did it.
I use a Starbucks card on my phone. It's not even a
Hmm.
card. It's just part of the Passbook app, and I get $1 off drinks now and again whenever I pay with it. I get it's usually specific drinks. Like if I want to get a special like pumpkin spice latte or something like that, I'll get like $1 off when the season comes around, as it has. I
Ooh.
have not had my fall pumpkin spice latte yet because it's not fall yet. So
Well, in 4 days.
4 days, but I've got 4 days to pretend it's summer. And then there's a star system, like however many, and it's not like per drink. It's like some drinks are worth more than 1 star, because some drinks at Starbucks are like $6, But really, the most of the time when I go to Starbucks, which is my preferred coffee place, I'm not getting the fancy stuff. Like I just want a nice cup of coffee, and that's generally where I get it. It costs me $2 compared to what $1.67 or something at Tim Hortons,
Hmm.
and I like the dark roast. There's a Dragon blend. It's a dark roast blend that they've got some like a Japanese blend or something going on at Starbucks lately, and it's very good. And I really enjoy that kind of stuff.
Now, when it comes to Starbucks, like I know, like a lot of big city listeners will be like, "Oh, Starbucks is on every corner," but in the town I live in, there's two Starbucks, and they're like 2 blocks apart. So it's kind of inconvenient in the sense that you either go to the one that's inside Chapters, or you go to the one down the street a little bit that's its own building.
Hmm.
Is there a lot of Starbucks where you're from, where you
Yeah,
are?
yeah.
Okay.
Jocelyn actually just got back from the mall today, and she said that there's a new Starbucks inside the Target, which is one of the corner stores now in Micmac Mall. There's a Starbucks Express at the bottom of the escalators in the mall, and then in the parking lot for the mall is a Chapters that has a Starbucks in it. Uh, in Spring Garden Road, I think there's two, and then there's another one down in Barrington. There's no Starbucks in downtown Dartmouth. And then there's several on the outskirts, like in subdivisions, where
Right.
there's strip malls and that kind of stuff. But there's certainly more Tim Hortons than there is
Mhm.
anything else in the city because they've been around longer. But yeah, there's a fair amount. Like you can in downtown Halifax, you don't have to walk very far before you hit a Starbucks. However, there is some local stuff. Like Uncommon Grounds is a local cafe chain, and they've got really good products, good muffins, treats, coffee, all that kind of stuff. Uh, and then there's also Just Us, I think, and there's one other coffee place that's also local. Steve Reno's is another
Mm.
local place. So there's a mix of coffee culture here. Like people can hit their Starbucks if they want, but they can also go to a local haunt, which is nice. So between Tim Hortons, Starbucks, and local places, there's pretty much a coffee place on every corner.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not a lot of Starbucks here, but there are a lot of Tim Hortons. But there's also like in the downtown area, there's a coffee shop like every other building.
Hmm.
And I mean, I'm in a city where there's a university on one end and a college on the other, and they all sort of converge to the downtown, right?
Yeah.
And the downtown area is just swarming with these like typical, and I'm not being negative here, like those typical like coffee shops where you'd see someone with a MacBook or see someone, you know, jamming on a guitar, hitting the bongos. I mean, they all vary in degree of hippie. I try to, hit the middle ground, get my culture in sometimes, but I'm a big fan of like, the homegrown coffee shops once in a while, just to kind of like, feel like you're giving back to the city once in a while, as opposed
Yeah.
to go to the big chains.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I like doing that stuff too. Like
Hmm.
I don't know. I like to support local when I can, but going to Starbucks, I don't feel bad about it. Like
Well, you
if
shouldn't.
no, I mean like if a local place really wants me to go to their spot,
Hmm.
then make it comfortable.
Hmm.
Serve a good cup of coffee at a price that everybody, on par with everybody else, and I will go there. But a lot of the places locally that are small chains, they're just not comfortable, or they're not convenient. Like, I mean, they're really convenient for students, but then I'm really out of my way, and a lot of times I'm meeting other people, so you're kind of meeting in the middle ground where most people like Starbucks, where not everybody likes specific local chains. And if
Hmm.
you're having a business meeting or spending the afternoon working with people in my office, away from my office, then that it tends to come in handy that way. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've been doing as I've been sipping my coffee this afternoon was update to iOS 7. And that
Mm.
is, I don't have a lot to report yet because, of course, I just got it. I was mentioning last week on the show when we were talking about the new phones and the new iOS coming from Apple that I was going to check it out. I haven't updated my iPhone 4 yet, but I did update my iPad. And I have to say, it looks pretty snazzy. I'm very envious of anybody right now that has a Retina display because I've got an iPad 2, and it's nice, but I mean it's not really high res, and I can see this particular design for the OS looking very sharp on things like my mother's new iPad, and anybody else out there that has stuff like that. Especially as an artist, like I can really see doing some art apps with this new OS and all that kind of stuff that would take advantage of, the different background processing things that they've got in there, and it seems faster. I'm surprised. With old devices, sometimes you run the risk of slowing the device down as you get a new OS, but I feel like Apple is savvy to the fact that, out of their 700 million iOS devices in the market, a good chunk of them, are older and not necessarily going to be able to handle the best and brightest and most beautiful of the OS versions.
Hmm.
But you and I were talking just before we started the show that you have an original iPad.
Yeah, I mean, I have the iPad 1, and I mean, they always say not to buy, the first version because it is the first to get chopped off the compatibility list. And
Hmm.
I was not surprised when actually the iPad 1 was left out of the iOS 6's compatibility list. So it's currently sitting at iOS 5. Now, I've been looking at buying a new iPad for a while, but it always seems when I have the means to do so, it's, halfway through the cycle and it's like, I'll wait until they refresh it. And, it's like, it's a never ending circle. But I don't use, and the fact is that I don't really use my iPad, not because I don't find a use for it, but because it is so old. Um, and you mentioned like the way the OSs would constantly, as far, you keep going, they keep getting slower. Man, that iPad 1 is barely usable in comparison to what it was when I first got it. It was very useful, but now it's just really slow because, they've added multitasking and,
Mm.
all that crazy stuff, and it starts to bog down.
Yeah, I've had good luck with updating to new operating systems. I have a 4. I'm actually going to throw out a quick question here to our live chat room to see what
Mm.
everybody else is running. So if you have a minute, let us know what iOS device you're using and if you've updated to iOS 7. One of the things that I've noticed with iOS 6 on the 4 is it actually got faster.
Mm.
And so when my mother was concerned about, is this going to, I don't have a new phone. She's got a 4S. She doesn't have a 5. And she was concerned that, it was going to slow stuff down. Because just out of her lack of experience, she's not even had her Apple devices for a year yet. So she just got used to the old OS, and now they're changing everything on her.
Yeah,
Um,
completely changing it.
yeah, yeah. No, there was a 20-minute tech support call before the show tonight. I mean, and it's she caught on really quick. It's not like it was a difficult hump, but when you get used to doing something visually, and that's how you recognize and navigate your device, when they change not just the way that it works, but how icons look and how they move and how they get you from point A to point B, it was a little bit to explain. But the I've had good luck with devices going forward, so I'm hoping that it doesn't change too much about my 4. It hasn't slowed down the iPad 2 from what I can tell. I haven't tried to do any crazy multitasking like have a YouTube video playing or AirPlay something to the TV via Netflix and then try to join a chat room or do anything surf the internet, that kind of stuff. But I'm sure it should be fine. It doesn't seem to be doing too much. Um, Molly in the chat room says she has an iPhone 4, and Joe says he has a 4S.
Mm.
And they've both upgraded to iOS 7. So obviously that just happened today. They probably haven't had a lot of time to check it out. But if you guys want to email the show, either in the chat room or anybody else listening, and give us your thoughts on iOS 7, we'll probably do a bit of a summation next week when we have some chances to play around and try to break it and nerd out a little bit about all the cool stuff that it does. I'm already just enjoying the transitions and the way that you close and open apps and that kind of stuff. Like they've got the parallax effect when you tilt the gyroscope around, and just it makes it feel like a classier device. Not that it wasn't already, but I feel
Mhm.
like it's a nice shiny upgrade.
How heavy of an app user are you? Do you use a lot of big apps or just a lot of small apps?
It depends. If I'm sketching, some of the apps can be kind of taxing.
Hmm.
I want to say Sketchbook Pro is pretty light, but some of the painting apps that I mess around with can be a little bit heavier.
Okay.
The things that I notice that are slow are some games, but again, like it depends on what I'm doing. And I feel like the biggest speed bog for me is Wi-Fi. I find that the iPad 2 is not very good if you're not crazy close to your Wi-Fi signal. Like, I mean, if I'm in the studio or the living room or it's okay. But if I start to get down to the bedroom with the router at the other end of my, 3-bedroom apartment, it doesn't seem to have the same get up and go as far as loading, say, like DeviantArt websites, web pages where there's lots of visual content, ads, things like that. Um, I've also noticed, and now this might not be the iPad's fault, and I'm going to put good money on the fact that it's not. Uh, Ad heavy sites like what is now Mashable, for anybody that follows them on Twitter. I use Tweetbot, and
Hmm.
so between Tweetbot and Mashable, when you go to surf to a website inside of Tweetbot, it takes so long for all of the ads, banners, and probably some mobile reformatting to load that I can get halfway through the article twice before the website will like refresh and I'll lose my place again.
Huh.
Drives me nuts. Like, I mean, I'm to the point where I just don't bother to click on Mashable stuff, or I open them up in Safari separately. And I still have that problem. Like, I still have that load problem where, you get through the first two sentences and it keeps on resetting the page because there's just ad after ad after ad. I'm just like, God, like and it's not even content that, it's not like it's news. Like it's generally just internet fluff. Like, here are 10 things that the internet didn't know yesterday. Like, okay, well, I'm sipping my morning coffee. I need something to just kind of browse around on. It's great. It's not, necessary content. So I'm not really hooked on Mashable at the moment. So those are the kind of things that I notice with the iPad slowing down is multitasking in the web space. When you're dealing with Wi-Fi, that tends to be where it slows.
Oh, well, I mean, I haven't updated yet. I actually have to make space on my phone before I actually do that. But I've noticed over the course of the day, like I work in social media, so I'm constantly on Twitter, and I noticed throughout the day announcements that this has been updated and this has been updated. But when you click through, you'd realize that these apps aren't being updated; they're being re-released with the price tag again. And I'm not complaining; developers deserve to be paid. But I use some bigger apps in the sense that they're like, not your typical $4.99, like OmniFocus, which I use to keep track of all my tasks and stuff, is a $20 app, and they've re-released it. So, and it holds, not only new features, but a look and feel that matches iOS 7. I think a lot of developers are taking iOS 7 as an opportunity to refresh the look of their app, but also, charge for an upgrade. I mean, I'm all for developers charging for huge update releases because you make $2.99 4 years ago, that doesn't keep the office running, right?
No, true.
And Apple does not offer any sort of upgrade purchase. A lot of these companies would rather say, hey, if you already own a previous version, it's 50% off. But that's something Apple doesn't offer. So I feel kind of bad for the developers because they have to stick it to the consumers because, Apple hasn't built this technology in. And I wonder if that's something that you've come across or will come across with some of your apps, or
I haven't
does it
come across
bother
it with
you?
anything. Not yet. I mean, like I said, like, in true to form, I mean, it was a quote from Tom Mayer today on TNT is that everybody is handing in their homework at last minute because this morning and last night, I mean, there must have been 60 apps on my iPad and iPhone that were all updating with iOS 7 compatibility stuff. And a lot of times that's not necessarily a whole lot new in the background. They were free updates. And a lot of times it's a new icon, like it's a flat look. It just wants to mesh a little bit better. Apple might have changed the specs on some things too. So I think that some developers are just reacting to that. I don't have any really large apps like that I pay for. I've paid for a few, but they're all under $5.
Yeah.
What's Downcast? Do we remember what that is for iOS? Is that $3?
Yeah, I think it was $3.
Yeah,
I think
$4.99 at
Downcast,
most.
yeah, I think Downcast is an example of an app that I think is staying the course with their current look, having just released their Mac version. But I know Instacast and I think Pocket Cast was just a free update with a new look. But I know Instacast has once again released a new app. This is probably their third time now releasing a new app with a price tag. And again, not complaining. I'm all for it, but I sort of see it as an opportunity for the consumer as well because, well, with a new price tag, you've sort of reset your outlook on apps. So I'm kind of looking at OmniFocus and I'm thinking, maybe I want to try things now. And if you're familiar with the GTD landscape of apps, you have like, you have OmniFocus, then you have things, and then there's like a couple other smaller ones out there. And I'm just wondering, like, if this is also an opportunity for consumers to say, like, see what else is out there, considering you're back at a playing level or level playing field for in terms of costs and stuff.
Yeah.
But,
well, there's. I mean, I don't know enough about the back end of it to know whether developers really did have to rewrite a lot of stuff. To take full advantage of the new apps. And I mean, I don't know how much of it would necessarily pertain to the iPad 2. but certainly the iPhone 5, the 5S and the 5C, um, in particular the 5S, I can see some developers wanting and needing to update their stuff to take advantage of the new hardware. Not so much just the new software, but yeah. Anyway, well, we can come back to that, next week and after everybody's had a chance to take a look at iOS 7 and see what's going on. I love this stuff. I mean, even if it doesn't work well on my phone, it's still interesting to me to play around and see what works and what doesn't, and even just to try for a couple days to have the old iOS on my phone and the new iOS on my iPad, and wondering whether they're going to have a problem talking to one another. Because I mean, I do that all the time, where I surf the website on one and then catch up on Twitter on the other and see whether they sync fast or not and all that kind of stuff. Shall be an interesting week of troubleshooting, and I'm certainly going to be having some tech support calls with my family, I'm sure, because Dad, his girlfriend, my sister, and my mother all have iOS devices, and they are savvy but not under the hood savvy. So when stuff like this happens, they usually need a little bit of a explanation to see what's going on, or at least they have questions where Apple's moved something and no one's taken the time to Google a YouTube video as like, where did this go? They call Joel first.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a big update. It's not like the previous releases where it was like new features. This is, I believe, feature complete, but just a completely different look, with maybe a few tweaks. But then again, I haven't gotten into it and I haven't paid a lot of attention to it, so I'm really looking forward to getting it on there and then, probably, trying to stay up super late, trying to figure out all the cool things it can do. It's new OS day, and I'm always into new tech and software.
Yeah, and I don't remember who it is, but there's usually a guy, I think he writes for the Huffington Post. And he, as a journalist, he gets early access and is under NDA. And then shortly after the release of the new OS, he releases a catch-all article that covers every last little update. Like, he goes through, it's almost like a patch update, for a video game. He goes through the log and explains what's new, why it's new, how it works, how it benefits you, and then he goes on to the next feature. And it's just this long, kind of interesting but hard to digest article, sometimes 40 pages or more, but well written and usually really informative. And I often end up bookmarking that shortly after an iOS version comes out, so that I can sit in bed at night and learn 2 or 3 new things before I go to bed. So yeah, but what talking about all these screens and new apps and new things to check out, what have you been watching on the small silver screen? Anything cool on television?
Only the best show ever, which is Breaking Bad.
Oh, I thought you were going to say My Little Ponies for a second, but never mind. I
I'm
digress.
not that kind of person. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's all
You're
good.
not a brony?
No,
me neither.
It's on Netflix. I think I loaded it up for like 2 minutes and was like, I feel weird. I'm turning this off. And again, not a comment. I mean, as Canadians, we try not to, bother people. But no, Breaking Bad, a lot of just constantly waiting for the next episode, and this is the final series finale coming up in 2 weeks, and it's probably the best TV show I've ever watched, and it's the best finale that we're getting. I mean, you know how you were looking forward to the end of Lost and seeing how they wrapped it up?
No, I never watched Lost. So no.
Oh, you never were? Okay,
no.
Well,
I know that the internet I know that everybody was going crazy over it. And I mean, and I should interject here and just know that Jocelyn and I are still on season 4 of Breaking Bad.
oh, okay.
And we are struggling even to get that far. So we're not super fans. Jocelyn wants to finish it just so she can keep up with the internet, and not get spoiled. So, and if anybody's listening that hasn't seen the latest Breaking Bad, Ryan won't get into spoilers. He'll just talk around everything.
And I'm not even going to go into detail, but just to say that it's a show that is can be tough watching week to week, just because you constantly want to see what happens next. But I found this show was a lot more watchable because I got into it late. I watched the first 3 seasons sort of like on Netflix. But I think if you're watching it week to week, especially with season 3 and 4, where there's sort of it's the mid-range of the series, it definitely works as a complete series in the sense that there's a beginning, middle, and end. with the middle being sort of it's a middle part.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little boring, but it's slowly building to
Yeah.
something. I think if you stick it out and if you've made it to season 4, you owe it to yourself to get to season 5, because the things that happen in season 5 sort of um, set up the beginning of the end. And then, you start getting to the end and you start to realize that they are really going to take the show and end it. It's hard to go into it without spoiling it, but definitely recommended. But another show that's ending that has literally gone off the rails is Dexter.
No, I've heard bad things about this on Twitter.
Yes, Dexter was a fantastic show when it started out, when it was using the books as sort of a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, Dexter's always been this quirky, corny, sometimes odd show.
Mm-hmm.
But the ending season has just been ridiculous. Just poor acting and ridiculous plot lines. Like, there was literally a scene out there, and there are GIFs to prove it, of Dexter's son running on a treadmill, hilariously hitting the buttons up, and then he falls and cuts his chin, and it looks ridiculous. And it's all in service of what little story there is. And have you
Weird.
watched any Dexter?
I tried to watch season 1 with a friend who was a big fan and had them on DVD, and got them for Christmas. We were watching them, catching up over dinner, and we watched 2 episodes, and I just wasn't into it. I didn't like it. It wasn't my thing. I don't know what. I mean, I know it, my sister loves it. My dad is currently slowly realizing that Netflix actually has good content
Oh,
now. And
so he's been watching My Little Ponies.
well, no, but I remember, like, it's funny. The other day, I had coffee with Dad, and he came up to me. He's like, Joel, okay, you guys watch a lot of Netflix. Yeah. He goes, okay, have you seen Justified? And he's all like excited to tell me about this brand new show he's discovered called Justified. It's like, yeah, Jocelyn and I just finished season 4 last night. And I've been talking about it on the show forever. And so he's really excited about Dexter. He's been watching, like, a season a week on Netflix. So I know there's people out there that like it, and I just, for whatever reason, I find it just out there. It just doesn't really grab me. And if it goes farther out there, then it's probably not for me.
It's an odd show. I got into it in my university, college years, where you had a lot of time to kill, and you were rooming with 2 guys who was like, okay, rather than study, let's marathon, this season of Dexter. I mean, that's how I got through Battlestar Galactica.
Mm-hmm.
It was just something we did, and I found myself dropping out of a lot of TV shows. Let me finish, Mom, if you're listening. Dropping out of a lot of TV shows because it was just like, I don't have a lot of time anymore to watch TV. So it's like, well, goodbye House, goodbye, just these weird dramas that nobody has time for. But at this point, with 7 seasons, it's like, well, I guess might as well just finish this. And they're really making it hard to stick it through to the end. And yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah, we like we don't really binge watch unless it's a cliffhanger. And that's what I like about having the access with Netflix is, like, right now Jocelyn and I are slowly making our way through Mad Men.
Ooh.
And still a difficult show to watch sometimes with your, girlfriend, boyfriend, fiance, husband, wife. It can deal with some pretty interesting issues back in the 60s. And it can also be kind of the worst in people, but then highlighting it like they're rock stars. So it's a little bit difficult that way. It's still a very good show, and we do like it. But we like to have something to unwind at the end of the night. That's not a video game. That's not, anything too intense like an action show or something like that. Sometimes we'll grab like a short comedy like Community or something like that. But we've watched all those, and so now we've been doing Mad Men. And we have the option, if we're not too tired, to watch the next part of Cliffhanger, because it's all there on Netflix, or at least up to season 5. But we haven't been doing a lot of real binge watching. The last thing that we went through really quickly was Hemlock Grove.
Okay.
And that was like, Jocelyn would be off for a couple days, and we would watch one on my lunch break, and then we would watch one at my dinner break, and then we would watch one again before we went to bed. So, like, we would be watching like 2 to 3 episodes a day, and that was a lot. And like you, I don't have a lot of time for that kind of stuff, but I like to take the time, at the end of the evening, to just watch one thing. And what's great about Netflix, of course, is that like you can throw it on at 10 or 11, and within the hour, you're done the show and you're in bed.
Hmm.
Like, because it's only 45 minutes or 50 minutes or whatever, and then you still got time to go get ready for bed and get into bed, and you're not, an hour and a half or whatever, with like say movies and stuff like that. But
Yeah, with Mad Men, I was really into that show, and I have season 6 sitting around somewhere. Whether I'm gonna wait for it to go on Netflix or something, I don't know. But I find that show is calculatingly boring
oh
in the
really?
sense that it's interesting. I find it very interesting. I find I'm always paying attention to it, but it's like the show. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but I find myself like as soon as I feel like I don't know if I can watch Mad Men anymore because it's kind of nothing. I can't even explain what happened this season.
It has a very unique pace.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And
Like
it's
it's
hard
not
to figure
boring,
out
but
what the main storyline is. Like, I mean, Don
yes.
Draper's the main character, but there's so much else going on, and you're trying to figure out, well, what am I supposed to be focusing on this season? Like, what am I supposed to be focusing on this show?
Hmm.
And it has a neat way of saying, it's not good, it's not bad, in terms of like what's happening. It's just life,
Hmm.
and life just seems to happen to these people in really interesting ways. And
Yeah.
yeah, I like it because both Justin and I like a little bit of an escape in our TV. Like we don't necessarily want to watch a crime drama that's set in today. We'd rather watch a crime drama set in like the 1600s or something. So to check out Mad Men, which is just, 50, 60 years ago, that kind of makes sense, you know, um, just in terms of a little bit of an escape for us. But one
Hmm.
of the things that actually we took in the other night, which was a surprise for me, was a direct-to-DVD release called Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox, which was released by DC and WB Home Entertainment. So, true to form, it's a pretty good animation for superhero stuff along the lines of the Batman, Warner Brothers TV show that we used to watch in the 90s, everybody growing up with that at lunchtime, I think it was on.
Hmm.
Anyway, it's a little bit different than what you're used to with some of these DVD releases. They take the opportunity with these home movies or home video releases to redesign characters. They give a different artist, a different character designer a chance to, reimagine what Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman all look like. And this one, of course, is, as the title suggests, focus on the Flash and his powers and a story based on a graphic novel of the same name. And I won't get into too much now because I want to recommend it, and then I'll get into some spoilers maybe next week. Because what happened was I was telling Jocelyn about this movie that I watched over lunchtime, over dinner, and she got so interested that she actually stopped me and said, I want to watch that. Like, I want to see that. And Jocelyn likes her superhero stuff, but it's not necessarily something she would sit down and watch on her own. Because some of this is really heavy comic book stuff. Like, there are heroes and villains in this that are pulled from like second and third tier Justice League, where like I look at them as like I think I might have seen them in one comic
Hmm.
once, but I don't know who they are. There's a villain. Oh gosh, what's his name? Something the demon. I can't remember what his full name is, but like he talks in rhyme. Etrigan the demon, and it's a real character, and he seriously speaks in rhyme all the time. And I mean they poke fun at it, but those are the kind of things that you can only really get in comics. And so the show in itself has, or not the show, the movie has some of those superhero tropey type things in it. However, it is a very compelling story to the point where I watched it twice in one day. And I'm pretty picky when it comes to animation and visual storytelling and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
Jocelyn really liked it. I mean, some of the shocking moments for her were given away a little bit before we watched it because I was talking over dinner, not thinking she would want to watch it. And I asked her, I was like, "Well, I'm not going to spoil this for you, am I?" And she actually said, "No, no, no, just tell me. Like, I'm not going to watch it." And of course, once I started to tell her what was happening, she's like, "Oh, crap! Now I actually want to watch this." Um, it's it takes some of the classic voice acting that and love, like Kevin Conroy as Batman, and he does the Batman voice for every animated version of Batman plus the video games. Like the moment that you hear him, you just instantly think Batman. But also a fun fact is that two of the main characters are voice actors from Grey's Anatomy,
Oh,
which I thought was pretty unique. I can't remember their names off the top of my head right now. It's Alex and I can't remember the other guy's name. The characters in Grey's Anatomy, but Justin Chambers is the Flash, and Kevin McKidd is I'm gonna say Batman, and without giving away too much, um, just I'll leave it at that because I don't want to spoil who Batman is. The basic plot of the movie is essentially that the Flash goes so fast that he travels back in time and creates a time paradox. So there's some different versions of history that happen. So there's different heroes in different roles, different villains in different roles, and it's really worth watching. It's Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox, and if you've got a chance to rent it on iTunes or pick it up in some way, it's really worth it. But I should send out a warning to anybody that likes to watch this kind of stuff with their kids. This is violent.
oh,
People die. There's a lot of blood. They don't necessarily get into gory stuff, but there are some very inappropriate images for kids. It's not a kids' cartoon. It's really kind of it's the animated version of superheroes we all wanted when we were 18, but we didn't get.
interesting.
You know, like it's an animated action movie. That is the best way I can put it. You know, like you're thinking about the old Schwarzenegger, you know, movies like Predator and stuff like that. Like it really is that kind of context, short of swearing. You know, which is funny because it probably doesn't have any nudity and doesn't have any swearing to keep a certain rating,
Mm.
which I think is PG-13. Um, but it certainly has enough violence, you know, to warrant it. PG-13 is the rating on it, which I think is a little bit, I don't know, like yeah, it's pretty heavy and it's well done. I highly recommend it. And because our original guest this evening was going to be Eric Mahler, he had some stuff come up. He was going to join Ryan and I, and he's into comics. I want to save at least some of this to talk about next week
Mm.
because I think he would enjoy it as well. So, but that's it. That's my recommendation. That was my big cool thing that I watched this week.
Cool. Well, I mean, I've never watched any of these, direct to DVD DC movies, but I hear really good things.
Oh,
And
dude.
considering,
Yeah, they're
you
really good.
know, not into comics. I mean, I love like the idea of comics, but I don't read comics, and I think this is based on an event that happened in the
Hmm.
comics, and I know there was that Dark Knight Returns stuff that was turned into a comic. I feel like I'm missing out not watching these things,
Mm.
especially with Batman versus Superman coming out in 2 years. It might be a good idea to actually watch Batman Returns or whatever they call it.
Yeah, some of my favorites from the directed DVD release from Warner Brothers have been, let's see here. I want to say not Gotham Knights. It was Batman Under the Red Hood is a really good story and a
Hmm.
really good animated show or animated DVD release. Green Lantern Emerald Knights was very good, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Nathan Fillion voices Hal Jordan in that. Nathan Fillion voices Hal Jordan in this movie that I talk about today too. Also, Batman and Superman, the Elite, Public Enemies. Batman, Superman, Public Enemies is another really good one. And I remember reading that comic, and there are certain points in that animated DVD release that they really kind of go frame for frame in the comic as storyboards for the sequence that's unfolding on screen. And it's cool when you remember it just enough to say, "Oh my God, this is so cool! Like I'm watching this comic book come to life." You know, as Superman and Batman are animated. And again, it's Kevin Conroy, it's Tim Daly, it's Mark Hamill's the Joker. Like all in a lot of these DVDs, they bring back all the classic voice actors, which make it so much better when you've got that kind of air of familiarity. I'm not always on board with the character designs. Superman does not play a big role in the movie in the Flashpoint Paradox, and he's fun. He's Superman. Like he's just this giant, superhero that swoops in and saves the day. But the design for him was really odd. Like he had a very tiny waist, and his eyes were really close together, and it just you could tell that the love in the movie was given to the Flash and some of the more key characters to the story, whereas other characters that didn't have a big role, the design were not kind of honed as well as they could be.
Mm. Well, I mean, it seems like they've jammed a lot of characters into this.
A huge amount of characters, and especially considering the twists that happen when he goes back in time, and does stuff like I mean, and I shouldn't say the Flash goes back in time. There's a time paradox, but there's two people that are capable of going back in time, and it's a twisty kind of way of unfolding it. It's the best thing I can pull out of it in terms of a comment to the story is that it's not condescending. It doesn't smack you over the head. Like, you really have to watch it and pay attention to figure out what's going on. It's something that too many kids cartoons do. The plots are just too basic. You figure out what's going to happen in Act 1. And this really, you have to get into Act 3 before you really start to see things coming together.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. Well, that's it for me for TV watching. I really haven't had a whole lot of time. I guess we can probably just skip on right ahead into, let's see, you listening to anything worth mentioning? I hear that a friend of ours has a new album.
Yeah, I picked up Eric Van Skyhawk's. It's not Skyhawk. It was his nickname Skyhawk. Or
His last name is his last. I want to say his name is Van Skyhawk.
You're right. I'm butchering it, but he put out an album, Shattered. I picked it up, and it's really good. Like I've listened through it 3 or 4 times now. I had a data entry project at work today, so it was sort of like it made it go a lot better. But it's interesting. He has 2 of his best podcast themes on the album, for App Slappy, which was not used a lot because App Slappy is now kind of on hiatus. But also, I don't know if you listen to All Work No Play with a couple voice actors, Liam O'Brien and his friend Sam Riegel, I think.
No, I haven't listened to that.
It's another podcast that's not really put out a lot, but when it does, it's basically 2 friends drinking and doing a very funny and sometimes crass podcast. But I love voice acting and stuff, so it's really cool. And one of the best parts about it, it's a really great podcast, but it also has a really great intro theme, and those are both 2 intro themes that I could listen to over and over again, and they are included in his album, so it's really nice to have those, especially now that App Slappy isn't coming out every week. But no, it's a really cool album. It's I'm not a big music guy, so I wouldn't be able to describe it, but it's your electronica sort of, that sort of thing. Like we're probably all familiar with Skyhawk's work, having done a bunch of themes on the Frog Pants network. But yeah, no, it's good stuff. It's $10 on iTunes, totally worth it.
Nice, very, very cool. Now, is it funny music? Like, it's not like Paul and Storm comedy stuff.
No,
it's a serious album.
It's a serious album, and it's kind of like it's. I mean, I hate to compare it to anything because, again, like, I'm awful when it comes to music, but it feels sort of like Crystal Method kind of stuff, like that sort of kind of music, like electronica.
Mm-hmm.
And there is some vocals in there which I think are sometimes hit and miss when it comes to electronic music, but the 2 vocal tracks that he has are actually really good, and I'm really digging them. It's not him singing, not that would be a problem, but he's got I can't remember the artist's name, but he's got another artist in there who's doing vocals for him, and it just sounds so cool. And they actually did a preview on Tuesday's TMS, I think. But
oh, cool.
If you go to the album on iTunes, you can get a preview of all the tracks, and they're definitely all worth a listen. So
nice.
Yeah,
that is on my list. I need some new music. I've been neglecting my iTunes library lately, and I've been wanting to do some drawing, and I've been doing a lot of drawing in silence, but I've also got noisy neighbors in the backyard with screaming children until they go to bed, so I need something loud to put in the headphones to drown them out. So
this is some great working music.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah,
very, very cool. Right on. Well, I guess I can drop into the Internet Minute here at the end of our show, and I found a couple of really cool, I want to say projects and clips online. The first is a simple behind the scenes video for Angry Birds Star Wars 2. What's unique about this is that they actually have Ian McDiarmid of Star Wars fame doing the voice of the Emperor, who is in Angry Birds a pig. So it's it's basically a behind the scenes clip of McDermott going into Rovio and recording the voice acting and stuff like that. And he also shares some tidbits about what it was like to record and also do the physical acting in the original Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And I won't spoil those tidbits for you. It's only a couple minutes long. Well worth checking out on YouTube. We'll have the link in the show notes here, and I'll throw them in the chat room here as well. And it's hilarious. Like, it's just because it's Angry Birds, of course, they're taking Star Wars with a grain of salt, and they're making fun of some things, and it's really really funny stuff. It makes me want to actually play the game,
Yeah.
just to kind of see, because I like, I'm not so precious with my Star Wars that it has to be, it cannot be made fun of. Like, I really enjoyed Lego Star Wars stuff when it was out because it was true to the universe and the spirit, but also had some really funny moments, when they make fun of stuff and whatnot. And the other thing that I've got is also of the sci-fi genre, but it's sci-fi made very, very real. And it's Canadian, which is just so cool to me, especially now that Kickstarter is available in Canada. And these are Little Robot Friends by Aesthetic Studio. And what they are, it's a Kickstarter that is trying to get the money up. Well, actually, they've more than funded, excuse me, they've almost double funded to produce these little programmable interactive robots. And they don't look like a whole lot at first. They're basically a piece of plastic with some sensors and some lights. They're sensitive to light, touch, and sound, as well as one another. They have little wood bases that they stick into, and they also plug into your computer and are an intro project for programming for hardware.
Huh.
Which is, I thought it was very, very cool. Like, it's open source. Like, you can program it to do different things. You can program it to interact differently with different types of robots if you buy them, that sort of thing. And the video does a better job explaining it and what it is and how it works than I will ever be able to. But everything about it is manufactured, distributed, and created here in Canada. And it is a very cool, not only just a toy, but an opportunity for some creative learning and creative programming in kids and adults alike, I think. I mean, I know I would have some fun with this. So if you're at all interested in robotics and wanting to try, some hardware programming, then check out Little Robot Friends on Kickstarter. So what about you, sir? Do you have any picks to share this week?
I haven't got anything for you. Like, it's funny. The internet has sort of been a lot of news stories, but I don't really find very interesting things. I mean, there's been a lot of interesting stuff come out of the GTA 5 release.
I was going to ask you if there's been anything, in the realm of video games that you can talk about.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a big game. A budget of like 250 million, made 800 million in the first 24 hours. But it's also one of those titles that is closely related to the whole video games are warping our children debate. Alongside Call of Duty and that.
Mm-hmm.
And for every story that is like, people lined up and bought a copy, there's like these odd stories that come out where like someone dressed up as a cop and pretended to butt in line so he could get his GTA game, or this isn't funny, but some guy got like stabbed and his copy of the game was stolen.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's just like the media goes out there and finds these stories, which could happen to anybody. I mean, I could be waiting in line for an iPhone. I'm not like, hopefully I'm not predicting anything, but that happens all the time. Like, people get robbed for lesser things, and the media goes out and says, see, video games. But there's been some great sort of on both sides, like where you have a newscaster who's just making a fool of herself or himself. The reason I say herself is there's a specific example out there, but just saying like, oh, video games are bad and can't you see? And then you have the other stuff where it's like just looking at, I think there was a great video that Discovery News did where they talked about how video games would actually help you, if you don't have violent tendencies, to actually fulfill those fantasies in your head and relieve stress and stuff, The most important part being if you don't have violent tendencies, because
Yeah.
when you have violent tendencies, usually
More
you're
violence
easily
is not going to
triggered.
help that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
easily triggered when you have that's hence violent tendencies.
Yeah.
But I think if you're mature and you're capable of handling things that aren't real, you could probably go out and pick up
Yeah.
GTA 5.
Jocelyn and I had a discussion the other day about how media skews statistics, especially surrounding video games.
Mhm.
There was a guy that she retweeted the other day that was talking about the release of GTA 5. That's Grand Theft Auto 5 for any of my
Right.
non-gaming
Yeah.
listeners. But and it can be a very violent video game because it's about theft and crime.
Mhm.
But this guy was basically talking about this stat that said that violent video games affect 15% of our current youth in this country, and they're basically coming down really hard on not just GTA 5 but the gaming industry in general. And the guy was like, you can also take a stat that says 97% of today's youth play video games. Statistically speaking, that's damn near everybody, which
Mhm.
means within that 97%, the chances of somebody, if not a swath of people, having violent tendencies or drug addictions or anything, like throw it in there, marital problems, dyslexia, like I mean anything in there, you're gonna hit them. Like
Yeah.
it's like spraying a crowd with a fire hose and saying, "I'm surprised somebody got wet." Like
Yeah.
it's really kind of backwards the way that some people deal with the stats surrounding video games and violence, which seems to be a hot topic lately. But
If there's one thing I'm looking forward to about having kids, it's that, I want to challenge, it's already being challenged, but for some reason, modern media doesn't just ignores those cases. They're like, oh, those are fringe cases. But I want to challenge the fact that, you know, allowing your kids to play games that they're right for. A game may have like Halo. It's going to have a mature rating. There's some B words and some S words, and the F word isn't thrown out there. And I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to keep it clean here. But I think my kid at a certain age, he doesn't necessarily have to be 17 to play Halo. But when you look at Grand Theft Auto 5, for much as we defend it, it does have some bad bad stuff in there in the sense that it's been being pegged for being overly masculine, and the GTA series has never really treated women in sort of a very good light. Um, and that's a whole other discussion. I mean, something we've talked about on the Gamers In multiple times is the way women are treated in video games and how it's done right and how it's done sort of like an ignored factor and how it's done just plain awful.
yeah,
GTA sort of rides the line in that sense, but more so for the aspect of like parody and not necessarily like just thinking it's funny, but more just poking fun at itself, right? And it just it'll be interesting to see when our generation starts to have kids where we grew up with video games and we understand that this is fake, and we can pass that knowledge down, because when I was a kid, my parents just had to make educated guesses when it came to video games, and their educated guess was as long as you don't show any you don't do anything weird, I guess you can play whatever game you want.
yeah. As long as your behavior doesn't change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And I think that was the way they went about it, but I know when I have kids, I'm going to be the one playing those games, so I'll be able to make that decision, and I think when it comes right down to it, parents just need to take a very active role in choosing video games and maybe ignore mainstream news for multiple reasons. I mean,
yeah.
mainstream news is awful.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
it's not just about
play the
video
game
games.
with your kid, even if you're not going to
Yeah.
play it all the time. At least sit down and have them show you what it is and how it works, and get that kind of interaction. And that's true of anything. That's true of
Hmm.
Facebook, the internet in general. That's true of movies. What your kid is or your teenager is going to see at the theaters with their friends when they go out. For a Saturday afternoon matinee on their own.
Yeah.
It just being aware of all that kind of stuff is I think important. I mean, I say this not having kids,
Yeah.
having friends that have kids under 5, and the internet is definitely not an issue yet. So I mean, I'm certainly speaking out of turn, but I can certainly take a look at what's happening with some of my, well, for example, um, Chad, a former co-host on the show. His younger brother is 22-ish, give or take, and seeing how Corey uses the internet compared to seeing how you and I use the internet, it's just different. I can't say what's right or wrong, but you can certainly see how much social media plays in his real social scope.
Hmm.
Like not just friends, not just professional stuff, because he's actually a young artist. But like for me, like a lot of the internet tends to be marketing and sure interaction with some friends, but it's a heavy learning experience for me. Whereas I mean, like the internet is his default way to
Hmm.
contact friends. Whereas when I was his age, it would be phone calls.
Yeah.
Phone calls and texting and stuff like that. So I mean, I say that, and I mean, I think there's what between probably 5 and 8 years between you and I, give or take.
Right. I mean, I didn't grow up with the internet throughout my life, but it definitely was a good portion of it. But
Yeah.
I think you nailed it on the head. Like, I don't think we need to apologize for not having kids, but I think you have the right idea in the sense that, just you understand that you were a kid once, and all you need to do is just, have your parents sit down with you, know what they're doing. I mean, I don't know why mainstream media is focusing on a stupid video game when they should be focusing on Facebook. Shit goes down on Facebook every day that
Mm-hmm.
would give you nightmares.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
So it's way worse. And I think, and I've seen some of the stuff, firsthand, you know, with family and personal stuff. Like, just Facebook is icky, and if you don't watch what you do on it, like, things can happen.
Yeah.
And especially with like job interviews and stuff like that, like, GTA 5 isn't going to come up in a job interview, but if you do something stupid on Facebook and it's there for the internet to see, like, that might surface,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Oh, I've seen plenty of headlines about people not getting jobs because of social media or other things that they've done getting in the way.
Yeah.
And I've also seen the reverse. I've
Hmm.
also seen job opportunities come up for people because they are super involved in the internet socially and their hobbies, and very vocal about it in a common sense kind of way. I won't go as far as to say it's professional, but just people are just aware that the whole world can see what they're writing and saying. And if you use that to your advantage, you can get work opportunities that you would have thought of before.
Hmm.
You know?
No, yeah, that's right. Common sense is probably one of the best things a person can have, but it also seems to be lacking,
Yeah,
especially on the
yeah,
internet.
it's one of the biggest holes in the internet.
You know,
Commonsense.com.
yeah.
So speaking of video games, though, I mean, obviously we're all friends here between the Citadel Cafe and Gamers Inn. Seeing as my girlfriend Jocelyn is the other half of your show,
Hmm.
or you're the other half of her show. I'll let you fight that out.
It's a partnership.
Yeah, I'm not gonna dig that hole. She's not here, so I can say stuff like that without her barging in and throwing a shoe at the back of my head. But what's coming up this Friday night on the Gamers Inn?
Oh man, Friday is so close. Friday night, we're starting off the show with a bit of goddess talk. I always want to say goddess, but it's definitely not goddess. It can't be. It's goddess, which is Peter Molyneux's new game. Hit early access on Steam. I know I have access via Kickstarter, and Jocelyn got a copy as well.
Yeah, I believe Scotty D was kind enough to send her a gift copy.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, no, I believe she's been playing. I mean, last I checked, we were going to talk about that and what we're playing. I'm also going to try to get a couple hours in on Wind Waker HD, another, one of few games to come out on the Wii U, but I'll definitely have some things to say about that. But in our topic, we're actually going to have Andrew Allen on to talk about
Oh,
free
right.
play and all kinds of just video game music related stuff. And I actually ran into him at Nerdtacular, and he's a really cool guy. And he was more than happy to say, we'll come on the show and we'll talk video game music, and we'll talk how hard it is to get the rights from these companies, and it'll be interesting. So we'll go live 8:30 p.m. Eastern on amove.tv. And we usually go an hour or so, but get there early. We'll be in the chat room.
Nice, nice. I always look forward to checking that out with you guys on Friday nights. It's fun sometimes to be in the chat room and get the delay. Hearing Jocelyn laugh down the hall and then hearing on the stream what was said that makes her cackle. But Yeah, it's always a good show. If you want more information, you can check out gamersinpodcast.com or, of course, amove.tv/TGI for details. As I mentioned at the top of the show, my name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything that I am doing online at joelduggan.com. You can also find my book, Starcrossed Volume 1, is available in my web store. You can find me on Twitter and Google Plus with just my name. Don't forget to swing by our website for the show notes, links to all the cool stuff that we've talked about, including, of course, the podcast itself on thecitadelcafe.com. You can also email the show with thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or Twitter, Facebook, and Google Plus with just the show name. I am easy to be found, whether it's via the show or via my own Twitter or online presence. Just track me down, ask me the question that you have, and I'm sure I will get it to the right venue for getting on the show. If you have questions or want to contribute, just like Molly, TCC fan in our live chat room, sent in a news clip about GTA 5 during the conversation. Obviously, Ryan and I didn't have a chance to talk about it now, but we can certainly take a look after the show. So I will include that in the show notes as well. Ryan, where can people find you online?
You can follow me on Twitter at rmurphy. Mention the Gamers In. We actually just recorded, I'm going to post after this, our Year of Zamp special. Zombies Ate My Podcast. I can't believe, but it's been an entire year since we started.
A year of brains. Wow.
Yeah. Or a lack thereof, depending on whether you listen to the show or not. I'm not talking specifically about me, but it's been a lot of fun, and we look back, we talk about the changes of the show, we talk about the future, and it's all very exciting. And also, I do a podcast with Paul, Sleeping with the Elephant, with Paul Swickard. And that's a show where Paul tries to make fun of Canada, and it's just so much easier to make fun of America when you really think about it. All he has is Tim Hortons jokes. Hope you're listening, Paul.
Nice. Very, very cool. Do you guys do that live?
No, we don't. Which is odd because it's probably next to Gamers In, one of our more scheduled show. It does go live on the podcast feed Monday nights usually. I'll have to talk to Paul about doing it live because we really could. We kind of have a full kit and caboodle going when we record.
I mean, and I like Sleeping with the Elephant, and I think that a live chat room would probably, especially if we can get some Canadians and Americans in the chat room at the same time. I think there would be some interesting stuff. You could probably even have like a question period too for a special live episode or something.
Ooh, I like. Well, you know what? It's funny with as opposed to Gamers In, which is a video game show, with Zamp and Sleeping with the Elephant, we've been getting a lot of cool feedback. So, and I think it's just more because it's a niche podcast, right? So, yeah, no, I think a live show would be really cool. I'd like to think if I can get more people on my side. I mean, there's not a lot of Canadians out there, so.
Well, I can't believe I forgot to mention that at the top of the show, but I actually was on Biggest Fan podcast on the A-Move Network last week. They did their Canada week, and I was up against Kyle as Brockett issued a Canadian citizenship test. It was 10 questions, multiple choice, and I certainly scored better than my American counterpart.
Oh man, I so have to watch this.
It was only audio, but it was a fun show. Brockett and Kyle do a great job on Biggest Fan. If you're not familiar, they basically take anything from pop culture or media in general, become the biggest fan of it for a week or a couple months, depending on how big the project is, and then report back on it. So they've done stuff like Twilight. I think next up was the Riddick movie series with Vin Diesel was what they're doing on their next episode. So check them out on amove.tv as well, and check out the Canadian episode. So Ryan, if you need a Canadian tag team partner to bring the hurt on Paul and whatever poor American sap that he decides to drag into the ring with you and I, then I am on board, sir.
Well, you know what? I'm going to talk to Paul. No one let him listen to this episode, but we'll get us recording live, and I'll bring in the big guns. We got, well, I mean, the only Canadian podcasters I know, like Joel and Jocelyn, I guess. The rest are American, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right on. That's it for me. That's it for the show. We've run a little bit long, but I think we've been able to deliver some excellent content. You have been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two. You ready?
Mm-hmm.